Welcome to Season 6 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing modern-day heroes for over a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to be sharing these inspirational conversations with our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. I think one of the most challenging parts of this role, Charity Matters, is talking to parents who've lost a child. There are truly no words for a loss that big and that tragic. But I have to say, I am continually inspired by the human spirit, its resilience, and its ability to love and give and go on in the face of such loss. And today's guest, Ian Sandler, is a beautiful example of that human spirit. And I'm really excited to share his incredible story and the journey of his nonprofit, which is a beautiful tribute to his daughter, Riley. So join us for a conversation you're not going to want to miss about Riley's Way. I am so excited to have Ian Sandler here today from Riley's Way. I've been really looking forward to this conversation because I think we have a lot in common, and I'm really looking forward to it. So welcome, Ian. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a real pleasure.
We're so excited. So before we kind of get into everything, just tell us quickly what Riley's Way is and what it does, and then we'll talk about Riley. But let's start with Riley's Way.
Sure. So Riley's Way is a national nonprofit that invests and supports the next generation of kind leaders. So we provide young people with leadership training, coaching, funding, and community that they need to thrive as kind leaders and to make a difference in the world. So we work with emerging leaders ages 13 to 22 who've started social impact organizations in areas like food insecurity, homelessness, equity in education, and environmental justice, all through the lens of kindness, empathy, and human connection. And to date, we've supported more than 3,000 young people across the country with over $2 million in grants and programming.
Wow. This is good stuff. And as a lot of people know who listen to this, my day job is running a youth leadership organization, so I'm really excited to kind of dig in and get into the brass tacks of all of this. But let's back up a little bit, because people don't just wake up and say they're going to start a nonprofit. There's a whole host of things that happen. I've been doing these interviews for 12 years, and 99.9% of the people have, I think almost 100%, I should say, have never said, like, when I was little, I knew I wanted to be a nonprofit founder when I grew up. Zero. No one. Fireman, doctor, teacher, lots of things. Nonprofit founder just doesn't even make the top 10 list. So we kind of get handed this fate in a lot of different ways, all of us that have started nonprofits, myself included. And it's not always a path that we choose, but it's a beautiful path once we're on it, and it's a hard path. So why don't you tell us a little about Riley and how this came to be?
Sure. So Riley Hannah Sandler was our first child, our eldest daughter. And Riley was a magical young girl who loved more than anything to connect her friends. Riley would get excited when we would go out for dinner, because that meant a babysitter and a chance to make a new friend. And Riley would talk about her friends' accomplishments. You know, my friend got second place in a swim meet, or she got the lead role in the play, as if it was her own accomplishment. She was so happy and so proud. And so we found ourselves in a just unfortunately horrible situation where Riley had gone off for her first year of sleepaway camp She was having the summer of her life. We ended up getting a phone call in the middle of the night, the night before she was supposed to come back from camp. And you just can't make this stuff up. We got a phone call saying you need to get to the hospital. I took a 4-hour Uber with a fellow parent who was my Uber driver. And by the time I'd gotten to the hospital, Riley was gone. And it was just a case of her being too far from a hospital when she had gotten sick and her throat had closed on her. And so we found ourselves in this just unfathomable situation and just weren't prepared to let this little girl who is going to have a huge impact on the world. We weren't in a position to say, we're going to say goodbye. We're going to let her light go out. And so we started Riley's Way the day we just had Riley's yard site a few days ago. So on August 18th, 9 years ago, we actually started Riley's Way in the hospital that day.
Wow. That day. Oh, well, Ian, first of all, thank you for sharing that. I know I got a call in the middle of the night and it wasn't my child, it was my parents, and it was a precursor for the nonprofit I started. So I'm deeply sorry. And I will say what's fascinating to me, and I think really what started me down this path, was not only looking for my tribe, who are these crazy people like you and I, who start these organizations, but understanding, tragedy happens all the time. It happens every day all around us. But why are there only a handful of us that take that and use it for good? And that is really like my life's quest. And not only to find these stories, but to understand and to have it the day of. I mean, in that moment, that's remarkable. That's a remarkable gift. I mean, mine was a year later. And most people I talk to, it's within a few months, but you knew immediately that you were going to do something.
Well, we knew we were going to do something because of who Riley was. And, I was misguided. I had an amazing father, as I'm sure many folks feel that way about their parents. My late father was from South Africa, came over here to get a PhD in nuclear physics, and was just came over with nothing, started companies his whole life, was very, very involved in philanthropy from an early time in this country. He was one of the people who created the Birthright program. So that's had,
Wow.
80, I actually think the number is like 800,000 people have ended up, it's either 80 or 800K. I think it's 800,000 people have actually participated in Birthright. I lost my dad when he was 64 to stomach cancer. And I watched him kind of battle that, and the way he managed dying and the way he took all of the lens on his friends and just the examples he had given me my whole life. Back before this whole notion of kind leadership was a thing, my dad was a guy who, we couldn't get home for dinner because he was stopping and talking to everybody at his company about what's going on with them. And he just always had time for other people. And he always taught me you can learn something from someone else. But what I was able to take from that with him being so actively involved in Birthright and seeing the impact he had between his philanthropic work and his entrepreneurial work on so many people, it really taught me the power and the impact you can have if you just kind of go at something and you don't stop. And so the really amazing thing about Riley's Way is, we started it 9 years ago. We didn't know what we were going to do. We had just got a great group of people who loved Riley and who loved my wife, Mackenzie, and me and my family. But we kept going at it. And from the very beginning, I was, and I always had us talking about what we were going to do with aspirations, and still that way. I talk about Riley's Way and say our goal is to be synonymous with kind leadership, like Teach for America is, or the Peace Corps. Really, these truly massive, life-changing, generational type foundations that create lasting change. And for us as a family, it's just our way to show our daughter how much we love her, and we've been so fortunate to have this incredible community of both young change makers and then adults who want to be part of it. And quite honestly, we've gotten so much more from it than we've put into it over that time period. It's really been something.
That's usually how it happens. First of all, none of us start out wanting to do this, knowing what we're getting into. We end up getting so much more out of it. But I do want to backtrack and say, I don't think the apple and the tree are too far apart from you and your father. So there is that. That's obviously abundantly clear. And I'm always fascinated by people's kind of early philanthropic background, where they learned to give and who modeled that for them, because 99% of the time someone modeled it, and it could have been a stranger that was kind. It could be anything, but that impact, that one person modeling kindness, which obviously is the legacy your father gave to you and you're carrying on, and is now Riley's legacy, is really, really beautiful. But starting organizations that rely on the kindness of others, speaking of kindness, as you and I both know, is not always the best business model. It's a really hard business model. I guess there's now a book called Nonprofits for Dummies, but it didn't exist in 2003 when I started mine. And most people I know haven't read it that have started a nonprofit, but I guess it now exists. But starting any business, because we're entrepreneurs at the end of the day with these enormous parts, but we're entrepreneurs and we're in this wild, wild west landscape. And there's a lot of challenges when you're starting business, and you weren't only starting business, you were grieving, which is for most people not the most functional time of their life. And sometimes it's a good thing that we have that, because I was grieving too, and I had that extra energy, spirit, passion that I could fuel a lot of that pain into it. But it's hard. It's really hard. So talk to me about like the beginning, like when you get everyone together and you say, we're going to do this, and we think we want it to be about kindness. How did you get to leadership? And then
no. So it's so much there to discuss. So
we got a little time.
I'm lucky in that my day job, my career has always been as a business builder. I've been a chief operating officer both for technology at Morgan Stanley and then at the Carlyle Group, and I was at Citadel, which is a pretty large multi-strat hedge fund when Riley passed, and I've been doing it now at software, private equity, and venture capital firm Insight Partners for the last 7 years. So what I'm good at is finding people who are really good at things and putting them together. And
it's a great gift to have.
And what I truly love doing is building and scaling. And what I will say, looking back over 9 years, is that the thing we did really, really well at Riley's Way is we have now 9 full-time staff, which would have given me a heart attack in 2016 or 2017 when we were starting. Right. But the team, starting with our executive director, Dr. Christine O'Connell, but like literally every single member of our team, they've all stayed from the time they've joined. Each individual is more spectacular than the next, and that's been a real joy to watch our board interact with our leadership team and our community, and seeing all the magic that kind of happens. So none of this, we don't make it 9 years. The average life of a nonprofit, I think, is around 3 years. I actually had a good friend who was an early board member of ours who quit the board because she felt we had raised money and we should be giving the money away, not doing our own programming. And so, which is, for most of these, she's probably right. But what I was very focused on was I had seen a lot of the 9/11 nonprofits, and a lot of them were centered on the person, not the programming.
Right.
And so any nonprofit, no matter how incredible the person is, if it doesn't rely on the actual fundamental work, that those foundations are going to have a real challenge to be lasting.
Right.
And so when we got together, we did what we've always done. We just found great people. And so I went early on and asked a good friend of mine from my college days, and she happens to run the board at Bloomberg Philanthropy. So talk about a
connection. Connection.
Yeah. So I went to her and I said, well, I'm trying, we think it's going to be around kindness and empathy. And she's like, I would go hire my friend Katie Leonberger, who's now on our board, and she was the CEO of a nonprofit management consulting firm at the time. So we, from the very beginning, knowing that we were going to not be curing cancer, that we were going to not be doing something that was very clear to identify, we constantly focused on how do we get data and how do we get real feedback on our programs. And in fact, our first program, which sounded really good, we went to inner city schools in the tri-state area, and we started running programs around kindness and empathy. The teachers liked it. The parents kind of liked it, but we were making no progress with the students. And we were fortunate enough to pivot. I had met a woman who is now a board member and a dear friend of mine, and she was one of the leaders of the Young Women's Leadership Network schools, which are a host of schools that Ann Tish had started, modeled after Nightingale, where Riley was, and Brearley, but for students from backgrounds where they wouldn't otherwise get access to such education. And so we said, well, what if we could put these teenagers from these independent private schools with these students from these young women's leadership schools together? And now you're talking about teenagers. They have a little bit more of an identity around what they're trying to handle. And that was the magic. That became our laboratory. And those teens were the ones who then came up with the ideas for both our leadership retreats and what's now our core program, our National Call for Kindness. And so,
how long in was that, Ian? Like, were you like a year? Were you 2 years?
So we started running the councils probably 3 years in, and so 3 years in, year one was bumpy, but year two, when we got the right educators to make sure we were getting the right students, then the magic happened, and. It's amazing what these teens were dealing with, issues like the impact of mass incarceration on families well before the murder of George Floyd, right? Like, really amazing to see. And this is kind of everything we're talking about with Riley's Way. Riley's Way is a youth-led organization. What that means is we have our teens on our board. They do the bulk of our interviewing when we hire people. They do the bulk of our judging so the very work we do on a day-to-day basis, by making it youth-led, your floor is so high because you're actually giving those leadership opportunities. You're teaching students how to interview people, how to judge, how to work with. So the floor is so incredibly high. And what we found is if you just give the teens this opportunity to work with one another and give them scaffolding and support, but just let them figure things out.
Amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking to somebody who totally agrees with me.
Yeah, I mean, we serve about 3,000. The youth leadership organization that I run is we have 3 employees and we serve 3,000 kids a year. So our college kids teach our high school kids, and our
Yeah.
high school kids teach our middle school kids. And so they all teach each other. And then they say to me, as the executive director, Heidi, I want to start a high school overnight retreat. I'm like, okay, so give me a budget, give me a plan. You're a leader.
Yep.
Give me the goal.
Yep.
How are you going to do it? And if you
Exactly.
think you can do it, then show me the way and we'll do it. And it's the same thing. And they're remarkable, aren't they? They're just remarkable.
Yes.
I love teenagers.
I do too, and I think I empathize so much with teens today. I mean, think about the two massive challenges between life on social media and the pandemic, right? So two really incredibly challenging things. But what has been just so awesome is seeing how resilient and the irony for Riley's Way is we really hit our stride during the pandemic.
Wow. That's a little unusual.
Because we had got our programs, we were getting going. We're fortunate enough that we had our first call for kindness in 2019 before everything happened.
Right.
But then we became this rallying point where we could get folks together. And so a lot of what our teens wanted was just, hey, get us together so we can connect with one another. And it became this real community. And that was really where everything accelerated. Yeah.
They were desperate for connection. And actually, I think they really are. And social media is a whole other Oprah. We're not going to go down that road, but I think that desperation for connection sometimes is misguided. I like to say connected, but not connected.
I like that.
That's a lot of what we see with. They think they're connected, but they're really not until they're old school connection. So talk to me about what fuels you, because you're you found this. You're a dad. You've got a full life. You've got a full career. A nonprofit is not usually like a side gig. It's not really a side hustle. And I know you have people running it now. But what fueled you in those moments? You're like, I don't know how much more I can manage. I'm managing a family. I'm managing a huge business career. I'm grieving. I'm trying to honor my daughter. I'm trying to take care of all these kids. Because when we start these nonprofits, we usually don't start out. We just start thinking that we're going to do one thing and it's going to be little and it's going to be small. And before we know it, we're serving thousands and we need to serve more and more and more. And all of a sudden we go to sleep at night and we're thinking we can't let these kids down or whoever it is that we're serving. So what fuels you during those times that it's kind of can be overwhelming?
Yeah. A few things. Listen, the first, and I've said this, but I'll say it again is as a parent, all you want to do is hear people talk about your kids. And so, I have thousands of people who know about my daughter. And, in a very personal level, we have two amazing children with us now. So my 15-year-old son, Brody, and my 7-year-old daughter, Ruby Rye, who is named after her sister. And so I was able, after the pandemic, we had our first in-person call for kindness retreat where we got all the different cohorts from across the country. We cover everything. We flew everybody into Washington, D.C. And and Ruby came with me. And it was that first day is a day I'll never forget because we before the retreat, we do volunteer work in the city. So she joined me and we worked at a local soup kitchen and she just got into it. And, so she pulls me aside as we're doing the volunteer stuff. And she likes to know what's happening. I said, well, Daddy, what's going to happen for the rest of the weekend? I said, we're going to go back to the hotel. We're going to do an intro. I'm going to welcome everybody and talk a little bit about what's going on. And she's like, can I talk to everybody? And I said, sure. I said, do you need help? She said, no. And so we get back to the hotel and I see her with a little pad. And so, luckily I went first. So I go and I do my usual, like, talk about Riley, talk about how grateful I am that we're able to have this forum and what a special weekend. So Ruby gets up and she goes, no, I'm Ruby Rice Sandler. I'm Brody and Riley's sister. And she goes, well, I never had the chance to meet Riley. I know that she was one of the greatest friends you'll ever find. And what she really loved is to find friends from different worlds and to connect them. So my hope for each of you during this weekend is that you make a new friend and you create a new connection. And I hope, and she goes, I hope you have an incredible, and as if that was my last day, I'd be fine. Right.
Yeah.
So
pretty much. That's what I call a parental payday in a big house.
Yeah.
That's as good as it gets, Ian. Life doesn't get better than that. That's as good as it gets.
So when you ask what fuels me, it's a combination of things, right? It's being a dad, and Ruby knows so much more about her sister Riley than she ever would because of work. So that's super meaningful to us. And then, you get exposed to these incredible teens and you see what they're doing and you're able to. The beauty of the work we do in nonprofit land is it's not zero sum, meaning, when one of our teens programs, whether it's through Riley's Way or just on their own volition, they're successful. That is joy. And that is our overarching goal, which is, taking the world out 30 or 40 years and just instilling kind leaders everywhere. So that's it. It's fuel from all this time with these incredible change makers and seeing that, knowing that the work we're doing and the relationships and the connections they're making really with one another, and then the way they're going to go out into the world and look at everything in a different way than they perhaps otherwise would. And just instill in this theory of change, which is Riley's vision, which is just having kind friends everywhere. So that's what we're shooting for, and we're going to keep going.
It's so beautiful. I can't even stand it. It's the most beautiful legacy ever. So speaking of zero sum and kind of impact, because on the nonprofit side of the world, it's a word that I hate. I love having measurables. I love having goals. I love having accountability to my donors and my stakeholders and all that. And it's all great. It drives us. It makes us better. All good things. But when you're measuring something, and you and I mean, when you're measuring impact and you're tech guys, you're probably pretty good at measuring things. Measuring leadership is a very hard thing to measure. And I was at an event the other night talking to a guy who does economic, and he's in charge of the S and ESG for social impact. And I was like, oh my gosh, like measuring is just such a love-hate thing. So talk to me about you and I both know when you are a piece of someone's life and you make their life better and they make other lives better. You and I both know we're doing our work. We don't need any measurement to tell us that. We can look at a great kid, seeing what they're doing to help other people, and know that we can go to sleep at night, that we've done something. But when we have to get to this impact thing, what do you like to say about your impact? What is that to you? Is it a number? What is it?
Yeah, it's listen, I'd given some numbers earlier, which we're really proud of, right? That, something like 3,000 students in terms of our programming and giving out more than $2 million in grants and programming. That's really powerful. And yet a lot of it's the very individual stories. So I think so much of all of this is storytelling. So I've got a cool one. We had a young chapter member, a ninth grader. She joins. This is a bunch of years ago, and she was very shy. And she progresses through. So these are our public-private. So she was at the Hewitt School, partnered with one of the young women's leadership schools, and became part of leadership, eventually led that chapter in her senior year. She then goes off to Cornell, and part of it's through the pandemic, stays involved with our programming, comes back and is interviewing to see what she wants to do in her life. And we're busy looking to get our ninth hire, to have somebody to really run alumni programming and really grow everything we're doing. And we have 70 applicants for the job. And Thais, this amazing young woman who started as this very shy ninth grader, ends up getting that job and chooses coming to work at Riley's Way over 2 other job opportunities she had. And it was because it was more than a job. She saw the work, she saw how it changed her. And this was an opportunity for her to marry what really mattered to her as a human with a vocation. And so, when you have stories like that, there's no better validation than a story like that from Thais. So, and we whenever we get our students together, especially in person, and, we both talked about this, I think post-pandemic, getting our change makers together, I love connected without being connected, right? Yeah. So what we do,
BNC.
I love it. So we actually go to the sleepaway camp where Riley was when she passed, and we host retreats there. The owners of the camp, Mindy and Jay Jacobs. Mindy's been a board member from the beginning. We've embraced one another. They have been just amazing. And Riley was having the summer of her life. She was too far from a hospital. Everything that could have been done was done. And I'm still a huge believer in everything camp does and everything around community. So we bring our change makers to this incredible setting, and they spend a weekend together, and the feedback we get after that is, this is one of the most meaningful things I've had in my life. And so, you either take the Thais story, you take stories that come from our teams. We have a quote from a student that I'm not a big quote guy, but when it comes from our teams and it talks about it, she said, Riley's Way has given me the opportunity to bridge the gap between wishing I could make the world a better place and actually doing it. And that's just, again, drop the mic type stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what we're trying to do. And so when you put all the pieces together, we can look at the numbers, we can look at the dollars going away, but what we're seeing is that we're actually having massive impact in these incredible change makers. And so that then fuels fuels us into how do we run more, how do we get more people on our leadership team so we can, and that's the balance, right? Is
and tracking them and tracking your leaders. I mean, for us, for me, and being in a similar position as you, people, I'm like, here's my finished product. Like, here's Thais. Like, here's here's my poster child. Here's Anthony. Here's my person. And this is someone, here's their journey. Because, you can give numbers all day long, but when you show a human who can talk about their story and say, this is what changed my life. I mean, that's what I'm constantly saying. All right, come on, kids, you're coming with me. I need you to come talk to some people. Because, right? That's just what it is.
Whenever we have events, and we've done more and more, we always have our change makers come and participate. And the adults are just like, it's catnip. They're like, what can we do? How do we get involved? Right. And you're nailing where we're going. So our next big focus is really engaging our alumni now that we're 9 years into this, and what do they need on that journey? And so what we're now doing is we're taking we have this incredible network of folks in business and nonprofit and tech and anything,
Right.
like literally. And so we're taking all of that community, putting that into a database, then going to our teens and change makers saying, all right, well, where are you going? What are you looking for? How can we help you? And then
Right.
we're just matchmaking them with office hours and opportunities. So what we say at Riley is you never graduate from Riley's way.
Right. You're part of the
We're
family.
always going to
Right.
be there for you. And so it's building that feedback loop between adults who really want to, and that's the thing. It's they want to help. They just don't know how to do. So it's creating those vehicles, and then it's just putting, okay, Dylan runs computers for people. He
Right.
needed a couple of lawyers to go on his board so he could get grants. Great, I've got a bunch of lawyers who I know who want to help Dylan.
Right.
Then you put them together and you step out of the picture and you just do it over and over and over again, and it's going to be really cool to watch it go.
And that's what, when at the end of the day, as nonprofit founders, we are connectors, and our real job is building. And obviously, Riley was connector, but our real job is building community, and that's how you do it, is by connection and build a community and continuing to build a bigger and bigger community, so we can serve more people and help more people. So obviously, you're a dreamer, Ian, because you can't do this work without being a dreamer. It's just part of the formula. It's part of what happens when you're a leader. You have to have a vision and a dream. You're the leader of the leaders. You're a dreamer. So talk to me about your dream for the organization. I mean, you're obviously national, but what does that look like for you?
So listen, I've said a couple of things already, which I'll reiterate. I want Riley's Way and our community really to be synonymous with the most impactful philanthropic organizations on the planet. I want it to be when one of our teams is a major leader in our work, that, on the college landscape, the graduate, from a working perspective, that people are like, whoa, like this is really an elite human. And there's so much to that, in that I actually, as somebody who spends a lot of time, grew up in finance, I think there's this misconception that, like, you have to be cutthroat to be successful. And I don't know where other people have been, but I've been doing this for 20 something years. And the people that are most successful at places like Morgan Stanley or Carlyle or Citadel or Insight, those are the folks who both strive and are both very, very smart, but really understand concepts around servant leadership. At the end of the day, as you elevate yourself in an organization, you're not judged by what you do on an individual basis. You're judged by what your team does. And so there's so much there. So I want the world to know that when somebody is part of Riley's Way, just how meaningful that is and what that actually says, because our community puts so much time and effort into it. And that's our whole model. Once you become part of this, we'll keep funding you on additional grants, but then you come back, just like you were talking about, as you move down as you elevate, we'll keep funding you. But part of what you do then is you mentor and you train and you teach. Right. So it's building that. And then, in terms of tactically, we want to get deeper in our programming. We want to broaden our community. We want to get even bigger from a national perspective. And we want to keep growing out our infrastructure. Like I said, if you told me in 2017 or 2018, we would have 9 full-time staff, I would have a heart attack. Now, the goal is to make that 10, 12, 14, 16, because, what I've learned really from...
That's how it works. Right?
Well, the thing that I've really learned so much from my community, my leadership team, they, whether it's Dr. O'Connell or whether it's Warren Shankman or Laura Kikuchi or Stephanie Dorr, like Shonda, like all of my leaders at my organization, I'm like, dream big, let's go faster. Like, yes, but
there's a process.
Right, because we need to make sure when you're one of the 35 groups, right? So each group that wins a call for kindness, you get $3,000, but you're part of this cohort group. And yes, we fly you in and you become part of this, but like it's this very intimate experience where we really are trying to turbocharge what these folks are doing. And so as much as I want to go, I want to say, hey, let's go 35 to 100. They're like, yes, we will get there, but we're going to go 35. Then we're going to figure out how we break that into two groups, and then we can probably get to 50. And so it's
slow and steady wins the race, right?
And so that's really me listening and learning from my team. And so again, it comes back to this whole notion of servant leadership. When I get on the phone as I speak weekly with our leadership team, it's kind of like, tell me what's going on, tell me what you need, and then get out of the way. And our long-term goal,
that's refreshing for a founder to get out of the way, by the way. So kudos to you for being a good leader.
These guys are all better at this than I am. And our goal is to put, and we already think we've got it, right? To put these next generation of kind leaders. We think we have the next Fortune 500 CEOs, the next senators, the next teachers, the next doctors. We need these folks everywhere. You need this approach to kind leadership so that you can really counterbalance this incredibly divisive, and not even political, just divisive. We need to get back to this notion of community, that we look out for one another. We look out for our planet. We really have to think about this in a much different way than just how can I take and take and take and take. Right. And so that's our 30, 40, 50, 60-year vision. Yeah.
You are speaking my language, Ian. You just speak my language. So I know there's so many life lessons that just come with loss. Loss in itself, teaches us so much about a rebirth and all of the great things that there are beautiful things that come from loss. As with all the pain, there is a lot of beauty that does come with loss. But talk to me about just the life lessons in, birthing Riley's Way and honoring her legacy, because there's a lot there, I think, that a lot of wisdom that I think comes with this, and whether people have been touched by loss or not, but what they do with it, I think is just really is so important to me. And I'm just, and why I think it's important to share stories like yours with people, to inspire people that people that are hurting don't have to hurt. People that are hurting can do beautiful things. So talk to me about some of the things you've learned in this journey.
Yeah, listen, I'll hit on a few things. First of all, I've been stressing, but I'll keep stressing this, how much I've gotten from our community, our teams, and my leadership team. In the early days of Riley's Way, and it's remarkable that the entire team has kind of lasted throughout. I'd come off of a work call and then go onto a Riley's Way call, and I'd be coming in as if like we were talking at 5 or 6 folks who were very senior in finance, and my team kind of pulled me aside and they're like, you need to realize that when people choose to be part of a nonprofit organization, they're opting into and choosing certain things over others. And so they've really taught me how to act, how to slow down, how to really think about each member of the team, what they need. One of the cool things that we do for everybody at Riley's Way is we give these enrichment grants. It's $2,000 to every member on the leadership team. They get to spend it however the heck they want. So one of my members, my leadership team, she had put like 3 years worth of it together, and she used it for her honeymoon to go to Hawaii, and sent this incredibly meaningful letter about how they were able to do this and experience this. And then another one of our members of our leadership team, she was able to go, she's pregnant with her first child, was able to go out west and to see grandparents that she probably wouldn't have the chance to otherwise have seen, and with COVID had not have seen. And, so you learn what it takes to curate and really keep a team. And so much of that is figuring out what people need, taking bullets once they need to be taken, and then just getting the heck out of the way. And, for me, one of the tricky things with Riley's Way was, and what we've seen is a lot of Riley's friends and a lot of my friends and my wife's friends and have gotten involved, really gotten involved in the work. And, in the early years of this, it was very, very challenging to interact with Riley's closer friends. Just the pure pain of it, and to now see them become active members of chapters and lead this and talk about the impact of the work and what we're doing at Riley's Way, and also their knowledge and remembering Riley so many years on. It's so beautiful to me to be able to see other people express their thoughts around our amazing daughter, and to take the joy that really comes from having different generations of our relationships be part of this, and to really build it. And I mean, Riley's yard site was on last Friday, and I got an email from one of our board members' daughters who is in high school, just saying how sorry she was and how grateful she was to know about Riley and to know about and to be part of this work and how meaningful it was. And you get these little notes that remind you that you're on the right path. And so those were,
and they're not by accident. And that Riley has a hand in some of those, and they're little reminders that we get when we do this work that there's no amount of money that there's no payday that's better than something like that, right? No. It's the best payday. It's the best payday that we get, and I so completely understand that. Completely understand that. So, how do you think you've changed? How do you think you've changed since all this started?
Yeah, I've changed a lot. David Brooks has a book, but a really good article about Second Mountain, and what he talks about is this whole idea that and I was one of these people in my 20s and 30s. It was like, how do I accumulate, and how do I climb, and how do I get promoted? And then I lost my dad, and I was like, okay, well, this is going to be my life challenge, and I'm going to rise above it while everybody else. And then Riley, losing Riley, and I was like, I don't know, I don't know how I'm supposed to do all of this, and yet the paradox in everything is I feel like I'm able to just recognize what really does matter, which is, being surrounded by people you love, making impact that in people's lives. And listen, this comes from privilege. Me and my family have been incredibly successful, and so it's not lost on me that I'm able to say these things, and it's partially a byproduct of society totally overvaluing what I do as a day job. But what I'm able to realize 9 years into this is just what matters in life, and all these things that used to bother me or stress me out, or I used to think were worries, were not. When every important person in your life is healthy and reasonably happy, don't overthink it, because life's going to throw so much stuff at you. And so, and by the way, that really starts with yourself. And that's one of the things I spend a lot of time talking to our teens about, and I haven't talked about a lot here, you can't be good to your family, to your friends, to your colleagues, the folks you manage, if you're not in a good place. So you have to figure out what that recipe is for yourself to be in that good place so that you can then go out and shine for others. It took me all of this to figure that out. And I definitely do some things that are just, I try to do one thing every day that is just purely joyful for me. I kind of just float through life as a result of all this. And so much of it is just the love and the joy we get from this work, this community, and just kind of knowing what you're actually doing and knowing when you're dealing with something like that you're working for a purpose. I really do feel like I've found my life's purpose, and that's taken me a long time, but that's probably the thing I would point to. And when I talk to parents of folks who've lost children, a lot of it is talking around when the time's right, and it can be on any sort of scale, finding a way to positively honor that person, to not hide from it is really the advice I give to folks.
Beautiful advice. And the way that you've honored Riley, and the way that her legacy lives on, and the way that your father's legacy lives on through you and your work is beautiful as it gets. I do think when we go through loss, one of the things we somehow inherit is a pair of kind of glasses that we didn't see clearly before, but we come out of it and all of a sudden there's very clearly what matters and what doesn't. And it's just, it is so clear. It is so crystal clear that
So clear.
it is
Yep.
so clear. And it is one of the gifts of loss. We do anything to not have those glasses and to have our loved ones with us. But there is a gift in that clarity that really, that leads us to purpose.
Yes.
That clarity helps us figure it out. And I think shedding light for everybody listening, I'm trying to find that is such a gift. So speaking of gifts, tell us how we can support Riley's Way, where we
Sure.
donate, get involved. If we have a teenager someone who we think is doing great social impact work, talk to us about how we can.
Sure. Oh, it's a pleasure. So the easiest thing to do is to go onto our website. So that's rileysway.org. If you like what we're doing, sign up for our newsletter. That'll keep you in the flow. Our social media handles are at Riley's Way Foundation at Facebook, Instagram. We're on LinkedIn, YouTube. We're going to have next year will be 10 years since we started Riley's Way. So we're going to do a pretty large event in New York City. So there'll be stuff around that. I'm a passionate poker player. So we do a virtual poker tournament that you can be anywhere in the country and participate. There'll be information on that if you go onto our website, and it's a ton of fun. We get incredible prizes, and first prize is World Series of Poker. I take that person out to dinner before we play. And really, more than the fundraising side, if you know of a 13 to 22-year-old, send them to our website. Let them know about the Call for Kindness. That is our core program. That is a national micro-grant campaign. Even if the student applies and doesn't win his or her first year, or their group doesn't win, you're then in our network. And what's amazing about my leadership team is we had 35 winners, but we had almost 300 applicants. And we get in touch with everybody who applies, and we are happy to do calls with them, invite them to our networking sessions, so you then become part of our community. It's not about winners or losers. We just want to get more and more people into our network. And then if you're an adult who wants to help out teens like that, similarly, get onto our site. We'll have means for you to stay connected. We're going to ask people different skill sets where we're looking for people, and it's going to take a village. So we need lots and lots of people to help.
Well, it always does. And I will say, you said one kind thing and one thing that brings you joy each day that you do. And I think today you are the one thing that has brought me joy. And I hope that you are bringing joy to everybody else who's listening, because I have so truly enjoyed this conversation and just love sharing stories of beautiful people doing beautiful work. So thank you, Ian. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for the incredible work you're doing, and look forward to finding ways for our organizations to get together. We're going to make sure that connection does.
Oh, we'd love that.
For sure. Awesome.
We'd love that. Thank you.
You got it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I so enjoyed talking to our guest, Ian, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think his comment about living a life full of purpose was so inspiring and true. To learn more about modern day heroes like Ian, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared it with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. But more than that, thank you for caring, for believing in goodness, and for being a part of our movement. You are exactly what the world needs more of. And remember that together, we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity matters.